Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the podcast. Russ, our second this week has become the norm with football season. We've got a huge game to preview this week with the herd traveling down to Raleigh, North Carolina to face the NC State Wolfpack. Game's going down this Saturday, 10-7. But interesting storylines coming into this one. We're going to cover a lot of those storylines, at least the ones that we have seen. And we're going to get into all the details that folks love to learn about during our previews here on the ThunderCast. But before we can get into all the good stuff, we've got to get a quick word from our sponsors at 304carwreck.com. If you've been hurt in a wreck, visit 304carwreck.com on the web or on Facebook. You can't stop a bad driver from crashing into you and making you a victim. But when you're hurt and you try to deal with the insurance companies alone, you set yourself up to be a victim again. Don't be a victim twice. Jason and Matt can't protect you from bad drivers, but they can protect you from the insurance companies. Find them at 304carwreck.com. Russ, the Wolfpack is on the horizon. That's this week's opponent. And yeah, I got a little bit of flack. We were guests on the Locked On Sunbelt podcast yesterday. That episode's out now, by the way, if you guys want to go listen to Russ and I talk about the herd. Dave Schultz asked me, is this the more important game or is Georgia State the more important game? And I said, well, this is the more important game because it's the next game on the schedule. And he laughed and gave me a little bit of crap about that. But that's the kind of stuff that Huff preaches, right? It's a 1 week season every week. They're looking to go 1-0. So yes, this is an important game because it's the next game. NC State is a 3-2 ball club this season. Now, wins over UConn, 0-5, VMI, FCS team 2-3, and win over UVA, also 0-5. That's got to be concerning if you're an NC State fan, but that doesn't mean anything really about this one. The game, as I mentioned before the commercial, going down Saturday, October 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Games on the CW. I don't know how to feel about that one, Russ. We can talk about that if you want to get into that here in a minute. ESPN Power Index, not really great on the herd this week. 31.5% chance to win for the herd in an away game down at Raleigh. The line is Marshall plus 6.5. It opened at plus 7 for the herd. Over under of 45.5, which puts the score roughly in that 26 to 19.5 point range if you're doing the math. This will be the 6th all-time meeting against the between the herd and the Wolfpack. NC State's won all 5 up to this point. I think most folks will go back, fans of any duration will go, it all started off really poorly back in 1991 when the herd was the victim of a 15-14 loss when Marshall was still 1AA, might I add, at that point. And these folks will contend that the ACC refs absolutely robbed the herd in that game. So the last 2 games, though, 2017 and 2018, both ended with the same score, 37-20, one in Raleigh, and the only game in 2018 to be played in Huntington, West Virginia. Russ, let's stop right there before we get into anything else. Let's talk about the series history. Let's talk about this one. And, hey, if you got something for me about this one being on the CW, I'd like to hear that too.
I really don't have anything on the CW. I didn't realize that was a thing that ACC was playing on the CW. I mean, that seems like something we would have complained about last year, but it's seen nationwide, so
yeah. It's just an oddball network, right? Well, not right. An oddball, but one for college football. You don't think of them, you think Fox, ESPN, even ABC and CBS, but you really don't think the CW. But, hey.
Yeah, it's college football. It's going to be a great lead-in for the Gilmore Girls reruns. So, no, my bird's eye view on this one is we're looking at 2 ridiculously good defenses that are going to be going against each other and 2 teams that have at different varying degrees, struggled with some offensive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be a kind of a low scoring game, and there's some things to watch for that we'll get into at a deeper dive. But that 10,000 foot level, it looks like a defensive matchup here, and that's about it. Who's going to break, kind of deal.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's concerning, I think, maybe a little bit for Marshall fans because our defense did break several times this past weekend against Old Dominion, and they gave up the big play. So that's a point of concern. You still feel really good about our coaching staff and the film study and the game preparation to eliminate some of that. But until it goes away, it's still there, right? So you have to be fair when you talk about these things. It's not just going to magically disappear. Hopefully it does. But every week we're talking about, well, if that can go away, then, and it just hasn't gone away yet. I want to talk to you for a second about 1991. We're not going to do a preview of this game without talking about that 1991 first ever matchup between the Herd and the Wolfpack. 15-14, NC State escapes with a victory. I know a lot of fans that remember that game really, really feel some type of way about that one. So that's a really unique way to kick off a series, right? It doesn't happen very often anymore. We've played, it seems like, just about everybody. I mean, every now and then we'll play a new team for the first time, but there's a lot of history here just for having 5 matchups in this one. So let's speak to that just for a second about how this one all kicked off and what gets stuck in the craw for Herd fans when they think about NC State.
Well, we were pretty young, sixth
Yeah.
grade going into 7th grade during that time, and I'm not sure that we could break down that game from when we were watching it live, but I do know that for decades we've heard nothing but ACC refs, and it pops up. Think about when we beat Clemson at Clemson, even though I don't think they were ACC at the time. Were they in '99?
I don't know, but it was.
But
Oh, you mean at Clemson?
yeah,
Yeah, I thought you meant the referees. I was like, I don't know
no,
who.
no, but I think that they were ACC and they were complaining about the refs there, and it's usually it's pass interference calls is what you always hear. Is like, well, I guess you can't guard in a wide receiver anymore in the ACC, otherwise, it's pass interference. We saw that at Virginia Tech down in 2013, and it just seems like one of those deals that has always stuck there, and I think that might have been the origin of that.
Yeah.
And I can remember vividly the North Carolina game in 2002, I think it was.
02, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the calls in that game, and I felt like we should have came out the victors in that game. But it's always going to be one of those things that's like in the lore of, well, we actually won that game, and we would have knocked off a big time opponent when we were in, at the time, 1AA is what it was called. But it was always the ACC refs, always the ACC refs. And I would love to go back and watch that game as an adult and with fresh eyes watch that. And I don't know if it's available anywhere. I've not seen it since, but yeah, it's one of those things. And I feel like there is always, and it's not just us, it's other games I watch. There's always, if the P5, which I hate that term, it's their conference refs, and then there's a G5 or a smaller, now FCS at the time 1AA. I feel like there is more leeway given to the P5 teams, the big teams, the national teams, than there is the others when it comes to some of these ticky-tack calls and stuff. So I think there's a little bit of credence to that, and I'm not making excuses. I mean, you go watch a game and you're like, hey, just call it fair on both ends.
Yeah.
If it's pass interference down here, it needs to be pass interference down there.
Yeah.
It's just like with the strike zone in baseball. If a guy's calling low strikes all game long, you really got no complaints when it's on you. But if it's also on the other squad, you just deal with it. You just go out and say, hey, they're low today, guys. Keep that in mind. But when you get 15-yard penalty pass interference after you break up a really good or make a good play and break up a pass, and you get pass interference and that extends their drives, it just really looks bad when they mug you on the other end and it's not called.
Yeah, I think that's what I was after. Is it's like what a wild way to start off a series history. Is that we're closing in on well over 30 years now that people have been going back and thinking about that game and like, man, that was the Herds game. They won that game and the refs took it away from them. So let's talk about some of these storylines that are coming into this one. Number one, Marshall's looking to remain undefeated, right? They're trying to go 5-0 on the season. That's the biggest storyline of this game. Number two, Marshall's trying to notch a second win of the season over an ACC team. Another huge storyline. Number three, Marshall's trying to get a second win of the season in the state of North Carolina, right? With another game on the slate as well. And then number four, perhaps the biggest one that has to do with the X's and O's in this game, NC State has made a switch at quarterback to sophomore MJ Morris from quarterback Brennan Armstrong. This Mr. Morris is going to be making his first career start. The stats we're going to talk about in a little bit. I think the biggest thing you got to take away from this is Brennan Armstrong was not only, of course, the team's leading passer, he was also the team's leading rusher. So a huge amount of the offense has been taken away from the Wolfpack. Now, Mr. Morris might be the big wild card and have the great, debut as a starter and do kind of what Cam did. Had a great game, and notches a win in his first ever start. Second time this season that Marshall's going to be facing a starter for the first time, a first-time starter, I should say. Oddly enough, both of them are going to be the ACC schools. So we'll see how that one goes. We already did those initial thoughts, but I got to ask you this one. Dave Schultz asked me, so I got to ask you, what does this one mean? Real quick, what does this game mean in the grand scheme or just this week?
I think it means a lot to the fans to get a victory over a bigger team. And when I say bigger team, I still think we're built to compete with these teams. It's just that they have much more resources than we have.
A bigger budget. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So I think that you can go 0-4 in your out of conference games and still even run the table. Don't even have to run the table and win your conference championship. And that is almost all the way the cards are going to be stacked for teams that are in our conferences. They don't want us playing for the playoffs. They don't want us playing for a New Year's Six bowl. It only goes to one team, so the odds are just ridiculously high that you're going to make that anyway. Yes, it should be our goal to hit the absolute peak that we can, but ultimately the way it's structured, out of conference games don't really matter on where you fall unless you have a magical season. And I wish that was different, but where it does matter is for recruiting. Where it does matter is fan base energy. Where it does matter is team knowledge and confidence that they can go into an ACC 57,000 sold out stadium and win, and then you can do that elsewhere. So it does matter. I'm not saying that this game doesn't matter. It just, in the eyes of the voters, is about all that you're looking for in this game other than those three things. So we win this game, then we lose the conference championship. I would much rather have a conference championship.
Yeah, I would.
But we want to win this game to help with recruiting, to help with Marshall's brand, to help with nationwide, the eyes that are on us, to help with the confidence of the fans, to help with the confidence of the players. We want this game.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? You have to schedule these games in order to have an impressive enough resume. So if you do run the table or you are a one-loss team, that you can say, look at this Herd team. They deserve that NY6 slot. They're really good. They're battle-tested. Their only loss on the season is in Raleigh, North Carolina, let's just say. Or they ran the table and they beat Virginia Tech and they beat NC State and they are a Sun Belt champion. This is a legitimate team. And the other things that you said also account, the recruiting, but it's also conference perception. The Sun Belt's killing it right now.
We are.
So wins like this only help to raise that stature amongst the rest of us, let's say. We're past the MAC, we're past the Conference USA, we're nipping at the heels and ahead of the American in a lot of categories, which we all saw coming. And the Mountain West has a legitimate beef because they've got good teams out there in the West, but that's what this means. It's pecking order for everybody else if you can go in and notch 2 ACC wins. But ultimately, for your hopes of a Sun Belt championship, have no bearing whatsoever. If you can win it, you want to keep winning because it builds confidence and you're a little bit more battle tested. But hey, I'm with you. Let me raise the Sun Belt championship trophy over a victory in Raleigh. I want the victory in Raleigh. I also want the Sun Belt championship.
I want it. I want every damn game. Every damn game.
Yeah. Everyone. So look, let me turn my hat around here because it's time to talk about some players to look out for, and I'm just having trouble reading my daggone notes. So let's talk about some of these players. We mentioned number 7 quarterback MJ Morris going to be making his first start of the season. The 6'2", 215-pound sophomore. No stats in 2023. Rusty hasn't attempted a freaking pass for the Wolfpack that I could find on ESPN or the NC State website. Has no stats for him.
Well, here's what the deal is with him. He played in more games than the 4 minimum or maximum last year. So they had planned on redshirting him this year. Very similar to what happened with Chad Pennington. Played in 95, and then he redshirted in 96, and they brought in Cresser to have the 1 year. And then after the redshirt, because Pennington had to burn his, he would get back. So he had been planned to not throw a single pass this year.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. Last year, he had 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. 52 of 86 passing, or 56 to 82. I can't remember one of the two of those. Had a pretty impressive resume for the time that he was in games.
Yeah, I've got the 2022 stats. He did appear in 5 games. So you get 4. He appeared in 5. 3 of those were starts, and you nailed it. 648 yards. It was 52 of 86. That's 60% completion. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
7 TDs versus 1 interception. Also ran the ball 49 times for 88 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He was sacked 6 times in those 5 games. So pretty mobile, dual threat guy. That's why I'm saying there's not a lot of film out there this year. So this could be something of a point of contention. It looks like 2 very similar build type quarterbacks between he and Cam, both mobile guys, dual threat guys. So it's a wild card. The herd really doesn't know what he's going to do extremely well, and they really don't know where the weakness is in 2023. A couple of running backs that we've got to feature because, like I mentioned before, Brennan Armstrong was the leading rusher on the team. So who's going to get the lion's share of that? Is Mr. Morris going to carry the load that Armstrong was, or are the running backs going to see more action? Let's start with number 2. Running back Michael Allen, the 5'9", 205 sophomore, 29 carries for 139 yards, leads the team from a running back standpoint. 0 touchdowns on the ground, good for 4.8 yards per carry though. And also number 20, running back Kendrick Raphael, 5'9", 195-pound freshman. 22 carries for 111 yards on the season. Also no touchdowns on the ground. Good for 5 yards per carry. So 2 backs hovering right around that 5 yard per carry range. A couple of wideouts we got to talk about. Number 10, wide receiver Kevin Concepcion. I hope I say that right because I just love how that is.
It is.
It could very well be Conception, but I like Concepcion.
It's Concepcion.
5'11", 187-pound freshman, leads the team 23 receptions on the season, also leads the team 245 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, good for 10.7 yards per catch. Last one we're going to feature is number 4, wide receiver Porter Rooks. I really like that name. I think that's a cool name, Porter Rooks. 6'1", 201. He's a junior. 10 catches on the season for 125 yards, no touchdowns, good for 12.5 yards per reception. Here's the bullet points. I didn't do this in the beginning. We're going to do it in each individual section. Team is averaging 25.4 points per game and gaining 345 yards per game on offense. Pretty balanced, 150 on the ground, 195 through the air. They're really good on third downs, 45% on the season, and they pick them up damn near evenly. 44 first downs picked up on the ground, 45 picked up through the air, and 10 by way of penalty. Marshall, by the way, is still number 4 in the country at third down defense, allowing just 23.7% conversion rate on defense. Through 5 games, this Wolfpack has 10 turnovers, roughly 2 per game, and that doesn't count the 2 times that they were stopped on fourth downs. Russ, thoughts on this new look Wolfpack offense?
Yeah, so it is an unknown with quarterback. We do expect him to run quite a bit, but here's the skinny on the running backs that I don't know if you know or not. They spread the ball around kind of evenly amongst 4 players there. Well, one of them, Houston, is now out for the season. So that's why he's got stats on there, but he won't have anything going forward. Kendrick Raphael also questionable for Saturday. So that leaves Mims the third, I think was his name. Hang on, just
Delbert Mims the third, 31 carries for 92 yards on the season, but he's got five rushing touchdowns.
That's what I was going to say. He, besides the quarterback, he had the only rushing touchdowns amongst these four running backs. Two of them might be out. We know one is going to be out, Houston. He has been described as an east-west runner and not a north-south runner, but again, 5 touchdowns. They have a long rush of 21 yards on, and that's counting the quarterback. Right. They have 21 yards as their long rush on the season so far through 5 games. They have not broken any. That kind of bodes well a little bit for us because we have been susceptible only to the big plays and usually the big running plays. And our defensive efficiency looks scary good. It's just that goes down as a conversion, whether it's a yard or 99 yards when you're looking at efficiency, and it's weighted not as much toward the big play. We've given up a lot of big plays for our touchdowns this year. Also, they have been taking from their wide receiver core, kind of reserve wide receiver core, and they've had to put them over into the defensive backfield room, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the defense.
Well, excellent segue. Let's go right into the defense. Quartet of guys I've got to talk about, and then we'll just slightly feature one other. It starts for this Wolfpack defense at linebacker, like most good defenses do. Especially from a tackling standpoint. Number 11, linebacker Peyton Wilson, 6'4", 238. He's a senior. 56 total tackles, 27 of those solo, 2.5 sacks, 1 INT, and 3 passes defended. He leads the team in all of those categories except for sacks. This guy is a great all-around player, and we know that the 6'4" linebacker caused a little bit of a ruckus against Virginia Tech. Number 0. Safety, Sean Brown, 6', 207. He's a sophomore. 30 total tackles, 18 solo, 2 sacks, an interception, a forced fumble, which leads the team, and 3 passes defended, leads the team. Very good all-around player in that Wolfpack secondary. Number 2 and number 10, both linebackers. Number 2, Jalen Scott, 6'1", 225, also a senior. 28 total tackles, 14 solo, half a sack, and a pass defended. And then let's round it out with a third linebacker. That's got to tell you something about this defense. 3 of your 4 top tacklers are at the second level. Caden Fordham, 6'1", 228. He's a sophomore. 24 total tackles, 13 of those solo. I've got to feature the team leader for sacks because just edging out linebacker Peyton Wilson is defensive lineman, another great name, Red Hibbler. 3.5 sacks leads this Wolfpack defense. Through 5 games, impact plays for this Wolfpack. 15 total sacks, 6 INTs, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 15 passes defended. Really solid defense. You know, I didn't write down Marshall's impact plays, but I bet you they're pretty damn similar to what this line reads right here. Bullet points. They're allowing 322 yards per game to opposing offenses. The Herd is averaging 412, by the way. Just 95 yards per game allowed by this Wolfpack defense, 226 through the air. 20 points per game given up to opposing offenses. Number 15 is their ranking for third down defense. I know this is one that we have to put a point of contention on because Marshall's not been very good on third downs this year. The Wolfpack are allowing just 29.7% conversion rate for opposing offenses. That's 15th in the country, man. Marshall is not getting it done on third down. This is definitely something to keep an eye on. Let's talk about this Wolfpack defense real quick before I feature a kicker.
All right, so 7th in the country in tackles is Mr. Wilson there at linebacker. Sean Brown, what you may or may not know, in that Louisville game, he got a targeting call in the second half, and he is out for the first half of our game. However, they are appealing that, and we don't know, and I don't know when the decision will be made on that, but as of today, it is still in the appellate process. So we don't know if he's going to miss a half or not. If he misses a half in that already depleted defensive secondary, that will help us very much in the first half.
Let's hope that gets settled on Sunday.
Yeah, who do I need to call?
Not ACC refs. That's for
maybe
damn sure.
maybe me and my friend Mr. George Washington could call them. So we've got a defensive secondary, like I said, due to injuries and other things, that they are taking wide receivers and putting them over into the defensive backfield room just to help flesh out the room. They need warm bodies over there. They still performed very well in that Louisville game. I just watched it again. I watched it, kind of the Friday night that it was there, but I did a rewatch in prep for this so I could get a better look at what they look like. They blitz a lot. They are, like you said, 15th in the nation on third downs. They are, let's see here, trying to find the ranking. 3.1 yards per carry given up for 25th in the nation. Rushing yards total 95.6 a game, 18th in the nation. Sacks, they're 3.0 a game, tied for 23rd in the nation. Touchdowns, they've only given up 4, it looks like. And that is good for tied for 26th in the nation. A lot of that top 25 markers that they're hitting on here, and scoring and total yards, they're in the 30s in the rankings. So they have a very good defense. However, point of contention on fourth down, they've only had opponents go for it 4 times. They've given up a first down 3 out of 4 times. That's 121st in the nation out of 130 teams that are ranked on here. So, also in the red zone, they're 108th in the nation. They're right neck and neck, kind of where Marshall is on offense. Marshall's in the red zone offense versus them in the red zone defense. It seems like something's got to give there. They're both Marshall's 106, they're 108. So this defense does have some cracks. Defensive backfield, especially with Sean Brown being out, that could help us quite a bit. And it seems like one of those things we're going to have to attack them early.
Yeah, it feels that way. As we've been talking, I've been conjuring up some, maybe some different keys to victory just as we've been talking, but you start to see what the strategy might be for this Herd team going into Raleigh. Let's feature a place kicker. It's a name that some Herd fans should be familiar with because he's a transfer kicker. Number 44 place kicker Braden Narveson, 6 foot, 210-pound senior. He's 5 of 7 on field goals this year, a long of 49. He's 3 of 3 from that range of 40 to 49. Very good, accurate in long distances. He's 0 of 1, I think, at 49 plus or 50 plus.
50 plus.
And then 2 of 3 between 30 and 39. He's 15 of 15 on extra points. The reason why you should maybe know who this is, he played his football at Western Kentucky before coming here, and he was a weapon for them for a number of years. So Marshall's going to get one more crack at handing Braden Narveson a loss before his eligibility exhausts. Russ, let's roll into keys to victory. What's your number one key this week?
Number one key has to be that our defense gets to this quarterback. I know he's talented. He wouldn't be at NC State if he wasn't talented. The stats that he put up as a true freshman look pretty promising. You expect some errors, and he didn't make a whole lot based on the limited stats that we have. But we're second in sacks in the nation. We're tied for 4th in first downs given up. We are 4th in the nation for third down percentage. We talked about how good they were on third down. They were tied for 33rd in the nation at 46.1%. We only give up 23.7 on third down. Mm-hmm. So if we can force them into third downs and fourth downs, it will help us quite a bit because we're highly ranked on both of those. So we really need to get to the quarterback. And our passing, we're number 1 in yards per attempt, number 5 in yards per completion, and number 2 overall in passing yards given up and passing efficiency as a team. we are looking really good against the pass. So we need to have that same strength get on this young quarterback early and cause some mistakes.
Yeah, the only way to do that is to bottle up the run game, right? You got to force them into passing situations. Look, my number one key to victory, it's real easy. I don't have to explain it. It is really super simple. The turnovers have to go away. I don't like to say, control the ball and limit the turnovers and penalties because that's football 101 stuff, right? And it doesn't seem like you're really analyzing the matchup to say that. But the bad turnovers have killed the herd this year, and they've just got to go away. This is 5 games. This will be the 5th game of the season. The bad turnovers have to go away. In a defensive struggle, which this one could potentially be where points are at a premium, gifted points or extra possessions are not the recipe for success, my friend. So give me number one, most importantly, the turnovers going away. What's your number 2 this week?
Well, I'm going to flip flop mine so I can talk about the turnovers. My
Okay.
number 3 was going to be that we have to win the turnover battle. They are +1 on turnover margin on the year, and we are -1 on turnover margin. That seems to be close, but it's not really. They have turned the ball over a lot, and a lot of them has been from Brennan Armstrong that they're replacing. So we don't know if that's going to go down or up with a new quarterback, but we have got to force him into making turnovers, and we have got to limit ours, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think there's a herd fan in the land that is sick and tired of seeing, a read option fumble or, like I said in the recap, I think it's time for Cam to just cut loose and fling it, especially against a depleted secondary when you've got a guy that's got a release and a run. Make him go track down the football, man. And if he can't get it, nobody can get it, right? So the underthrown type deal, just let it go away. Have a little confidence in your arm, have a little confidence in your guys to make a play for you, and let's eliminate that easy interception and maybe we get the spectacular plays and a little confidence gets built and we can see that more and more. Number 2 for me is Rasheen Ali and Cam Fancher have to carry the load. They have to carry the load offensively. Now, based on some of the things that you said about this Wolfpack secondary being potentially depleted and maybe just needing, quote, warm bodies to kind of fill some space, that tells me that maybe our 3rd and 4th wide receivers could be a really good option in this game. Because what are the odds that a depleted secondary with whoever may be in there is going to be able to go step for step with whoever we line up at wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Maybe our slots can just feast, guys with speed to burn, Chuck Montgomery, Jaden Harrison, Caleb Coombs broke out last week. Maybe this is where those wrinkles exist. If you can get a favorable matchup on a 3rd or 4th corner or a 3rd or 4th safety against guys that we know can make plays, also tells me if they're going to commit to the run, Cade Conley could have a huge day. If he can get a release across the middle and make some plays against a potentially depleted secondary. But first and foremost, Ali and Cam have to carry the load. We've seen it from Cam this past week. We saw a little bit of a coming out party. If we can keep the trend continuing, Rasheen Ali's able to bust that long run that we were missing against Old Dominion. Man, I really like what the herd can do in Raleigh. You have to respect what they can do, but those 2 guys primarily have to carry the load.
Very similar for me for my 3rd is that you cannot be held under 100 yards rushing, which they have done on average all year long. 95.6, like I said, for where is that? 18th in the country against the rush. So we have got to have a couple of long runs. We will not be able to take advantage of their passing defense inefficiency if we cannot establish that run. We have got to not be one-dimensional. We have got to be able to run the football against them. So I think that I don't really want to tie a number on it, but I think that we kind of need to be above 150 yards rushing to establish it enough with breakaways or 12-yard runs here, 15 yards there, that they cannot just drop back and say, well, we've got them on the rush and everything. They're going to have to pass, so let's help our secondary out and we'll drop 8 and whatever. We have got to be able to run and run early on them so we can pass.
Yeah, very true. Number 3 for me, it's assignment defense for the herd. We're seeing a lot of this guy's making the wrong read, biting on the read op. You're supposed to cover the quarterback. You bit on the running back. That's got to go away. It's got to be assignment defense for the herd to stop the big breakaway plays that are keeping teams in games or swinging momentum back to our opponents. And this one's on the road, man. You can't afford to engage 57,000 fans for an exciting play when they may be on the verge of this one getting out of hand for Marshall. Assignment defense is the key defensively this week. What do you got?
My final one, and this is very broad, but what helps in close games? Special teams. We have got to win the special teams battle, and it's not just punting and field position. It's not just kicker. We're 4 of 7. They're 5 of 7. They have a kicker that's hit one from 49. We just hit one over 40 for the first time this year, 42-yarder. But they are tied for 13th in the nation amongst all kickoff returns. They do have a kickoff return for a touchdown, and they have a couple of guys back there that are electric. I think that's one of the reasons we've been practicing those pooch kicks was not just the opponents we were playing, because they did have some good returning options, but we knew coming in we were not going to be able to kick it to these guys. Mm-hmm. Consequently, we do a very good job right now of defending the kickoff returns, and I think we're giving up close to 16 yards is all we're giving up. So we have got to help win the field position and the points on the board with the kicker via special teams.
I love that. My final one is a team concept. It is simply stated, you got to grind, you got to chop wood, and you've got to stay in the moment. You've got to remain focused, play by play, literally cliche, one play at a time, and just make enough plays that when you look up at the end of the game, you are ahead on the scoreboard. Marshall has come back from 21-3. Nope, Old Dominion is not NC State. We know that. But they've done that, right? They've been in that fight. They've been in that battle. And this is the type of thing to where a team like Marshall that has won games in the fashion that they've won games all season long is built for these moments. They're built to put your head down, keep chopping wood, keep grinding, trust your process, like Coach Huff says. The process is the process, and it works. This is just another iteration of that. Russ, who's your MVP this week for the herd?
I think it's going to be Rasheen Ali. I'm going to ride that train, and I'm just going to keep riding that train. He's our All-American candidate. He's everything that you want in a running back, blocking, passing, breakaway speed, getting power, getting speed, getting elusiveness, finding the holes. I need to see him do that against them, put up over 100, put a couple scores up on the board, which he has averaged all year long, and he's my MVP.
Great pick. He lit up Virginia Tech for $170. It'd be great to see him do it again against NC State. Look, I'm riding with Cam. Cam's got the hot hand coming off a great game. If my number one key to victory comes to fruition and the turnovers go away, you're looking at a Sunbelt Offensive Player of the Week caliber performance. If we just have similar to what we saw against Old Dominion minus the turnovers. How about a score prediction, dude?
Oh, I've been going back and forth so much, and I'm going to say that Herd pulls it out 24-20. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I lowered the score for both teams. I thought about making us a higher spread. I thought, well, it's in their house. We're going to get screwed by the refs, and I flip-flopped to them. I have confidence in our team and in our defense and in our guys to get it done. And I'm not sliding the offense at all. I just know that we are going to wreck some stuff on defense in this game. And give me 24-20 Marshall.
Man, we are really close this one. I actually had that penciled in, and then I thought, nope, you know what? I'm doing a little 1991 throwback. Give me the herd 24-23 in a really tight one in Raleigh, North Carolina to escape, remain undefeated, go to 5-0, notch 2 ACC wins, 2 wins in the state of North Carolina, and a little bit of national pub for the herd yet again. Russ, this was an awesome preview. This is going to be a great game. I know you're going to be there. I can't wait to watch this one go down. I hope my son has a great time. I told you he's coming to the game. He's going to bring his girlfriend. Guys, on the other side of this break, we've got a very special guest joining us, someone that Sunbelt fans should be very familiar with. We've got Noah Frary going to join the ThunderCast and talk a little herd ball. He's the play-by-play broadcaster for the Sun Belt and the ACC Network. He's one half of the Frary and Smith podcast. We're going to talk about the herd in the SBC, his perception of Marshall, and of course, the Marshall fan base, expectations of the herd moving forward, and maybe I'll see if I can get out of him what his dream scenario looks like for the SBC in the future. That, and who knows what else. Hang with us. It's the ThunderCast. Russ, check it out. We've got Noah Frary on the ThunderCast this week. This is like a milestone moment, right? I've been following the Frary and Smith podcast, it seems like, since it started. I probably haven't since it started, but I listen every week. It's usually one of the commutes to work is listening to the Frary and Smith podcast each week. These guys do a great job following the Sun Belt and informing all Sun Belt fans about the goings-on in the Sun Belt, and they're really just damn entertaining to listen to. I love the dynamic between Noah and Caden Smith. Noah, thanks for joining us today on the ThunderCast. Like I said, it's a milestone moment for us. We feel really cool about having you here and you being willing to just sit down with a couple of knuckleheads like us and talk Sun Belt for a little bit.
Well, guys, I appreciate you having me on. It's a big achievement for us, too, to come on the ThunderCast pod. We love the Marshall fan base. Certainly looking forward to getting more interactions with them moving forward.
Well, then, let's just lead right in with that. I was going to ask this down the road, but you kind of set me up. So if you're going to tee it up, I'm going to knock it out of the park. Let's talk about your perception of Marshall, maybe before they joined the Sun Belt, then when they did join the Sun Belt, and now after we've been in for a year or so. What's your perception of this Marshall fan base as it relates to the rest of the Sun Belt?
Yeah, I got to admit, it has been a fun journey. Obviously, when you hear that Marshall is coming into the Sun Belt Conference, you think back to the history of this program, thinking all the way back to the plane crash and just so much that has taken place around this Marshall fan base. You know that this is a fan base that loves their football. They love this team. And, I really feel like the fan base, kind of plays into just this hard work mentality that we now see this, this football team. Obviously, very familiar with, the city of Huntington. And it's been a lot of fun. I think Marshall definitely has one of the more talkative fan bases on Twitter. We've enjoyed interacting with them on, some of the good, some of the bad. But it's been a lot of fun. They've been a great addition. And, I think one of the things that Caden and I have both really enjoyed seeing is, just the turnout at some of these football games. I think back to the Stripe the Joan game, against Virginia Tech. And just an electric atmosphere there. I'm hoping to see more of that as the season moves on. I'm planning on, as of right now, coming up for Marshall James Madison and getting my first experience at the Jones. So looking forward to further interacting with this Marshall fan base. But so far, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, look, hold on before you invite him to the tailgate. I know that's coming. How dare you never rank a Marshall player number one on any list that you put out? You're going to hear about it. Okay, so let me just tell you that right now. Russ, I'm sorry to preempt what you were going to say, but have at it.
No, it's all right. So, Noah, you obviously do commentary for a lot of Sun Belt games on ESPN Plus and stuff like that. And I just have to get this out here. So you actually hate everyone's favorite team. Do I have that correct?
Honestly, it was funny. One of the first guys I ever talked to when I got into this industry, he actually had on his business card, "I'm so-and-so and I hate your favorite team."
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what you run into on Twitter. Everyone makes that assumption. I actually did not grow up a major sports fan. The only sport that I really followed growing up is baseball. I grew up in upstate New York, so I'm a Yankees fan. You can love me or hate me, but I have the unique ability when I step into a college football environment and a college athletic environment, I don't really care who wins. So no, I do not hate your favorite sports teams.
I've got it written down. It has to be I've got it written down right here. He hates my team.
Yeah.
So, no. Good stuff. But no, KD did highlight it. I was going to do that much later. But when you do come up, we have a banging tailgate right next to the stadium.
Gonna have to join.
Does. And for that JMU game, it's a Thursday night game, but we'll be there early in the afternoon. We're doing a low country boil. So
there we go. Well, now I'm going to have to get into town a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Come hungry.
Now you got to tell them though, because we deal with regionalities that do different types of low country boil, and you got to let them know from the outset you're not competing with that Louisiana style of cook. So let them know now.
Louisiana does not do a low country boil. South Carolina is where the low country is, and that's where that boil comes from. But mine does have a little bit of Chesapeake Bay influence into it. But
man, I didn't know I was going to get a history lesson on low country boils here today.
Also called Frogmore stew. I can go on and on. We can do a spinoff here on tailgating and meals and everything.
Done.
Whatever you want to do, you just let me know.
So look, the Herd's got a big one this weekend, right? We're going down to Raleigh, North Carolina. You call games for both the Sun Belt and the ACC network. This seems to be kind of right in your wheelhouse. Russ and I just finished our game preview, and we see this one as potentially a matchup of two really good defenses, and not sure fully what NC State's going to look like on offense with a quarterback change. What are you kind of seeing in this one, as it relates to the Herd, and do you think they have the ability to go down there and escape or convincingly win against NC State?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it would ever be a convincing win, but I do think that there is a real chance to win this football game. You go into this game, Vegas has this as last check. They have NC State as a 7-point favorite, and so that seems to speak to this game perhaps staying close. I think, KD, you bring up an interesting point there, particularly on the NC State side with a new quarterback. Brennan Armstrong's been the guy all year long. The coach makes the change. Dave Doran makes the change. He's going with TJ Morris this weekend, who will be making his first appearance of the season, does have some history in the past. So I think that's, really interesting to see, and just kind of how does Marshall game plan against that? Morris did play a couple of games last year against Virginia Tech, against Wake Forest. So there is some game film on him for this coaching staff to kind of sink their teeth into, but you just don't know what he's going to look like in this first game. So I think it's an interesting test, for this Marshall defense. I think your point about defense is so well taken in this game because you have an NC State defense that's been pretty good this season. They've played strong against some opponents. I think they're particularly strong up front. And actually, when Cade and I record our preview that's going to air on Friday on the Frary and Smith podcast, that's one of the points that we're going to talk about. It's NC State's front seven versus this offensive line for Marshall. And I think that could play a huge, aspect in this football game. We all know Marshall loves to run the football. Rasheen Ali is obviously the bell cow. Cam Fancher starting to get more and more involved in the run game. The one thing you have to keep an eye out in this matchup, NC State's really good on third down. They're like top 15 in the country right now. Whereas you look at Marshall, who loves to run the football, they need to have success on early downs in this football game. If they can have success on first and second down running the football and not give NC State opportunities, in third and long plays that maybe now you have to see Cam Fancher throw the ball, I think this Marshall team can remain successful. And then the other element of this, we've harped on it all season long. I'm sure you guys have as well. We need to see this Marshall team start strong. They are a team that they're going to grind you down. They're probably going to outplay you in the third and fourth quarter, but we all know how important it is, particularly against these Power 5 opponents, to get off to a strong start. And when you look at Marshall this year, to this point, they've scored 3 points in the first quarter. And I think we need to see that change because you've played some teams that you can get by doing that, but you're starting to work into a part of your schedule where you need to be able to play well early in football games. So I think those are just some high level things that I'm really paying attention for as we head into this NC State game for Marshall.
See, I told you he hates our favorite team.
Also tells me we know a little bit about what we're talking about, Russ.
You do.
Yeah. Now this next question, we're going to delve in. There'll be a spinoff by either me or KD talking about some more about this, but just on surface level, tell me a little bit about the Sun Belt knocking off these P5s, which I always have to say, I hate that term, but the Sun Belt, and not just this year, but it seems like over the past couple of years or several years, the Sun Belt has racked up quite a few of them, and we're playing yet another one this week, and we have knocked off a P5 team every week of the season so far, I believe, this year. So what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's been an impressive start to this year. I mean, with the exception of last week where Louisiana loses to Minnesota, I think that was the game people thought Louisiana might win, and we would have had 5 straight weeks. Marshall would have had a chance to make it 6. But To have 4 Power 5 wins to begin this year has already been impressive. You think back to what Texas State did in week 1 against Baylor. Obviously, JMU's win over Virginia. I think of what Marshall was able to do to Virginia Tech. There's been some impressive showings this year, and I don't want to forget South Alabama, Oklahoma State as well. It has been so interesting as I've spoken with Caden, as I've gotten to know Caden, and I know we'll talk about that relationship a little bit more later on this episode, but Caden talks about App State a lot, and obviously he played there, played at a very high level, and played in some of these environments. And the one thing he always talks about is that Sunbelt teams are always ready to play in these environments. You see the strong defenses that most Sunbelt teams, particularly at the top, are bringing to the table. It's always going to give you a chance against some of these Power 5 teams. I think what's even become more interesting is you're starting to maybe see a resurgence of some of these strong Sunbelt offenses, which then allow you to have multiple ways to beat these Power 5 teams. Sunbelt teams have always been overlooked in these matchups, and I think that they come in with a chip on their shoulder, and they've been able to play well. We also see, decent contingents of fans make it out to these away games that have been won, and even Power 5 home games. So it's been really interesting to watch. The Sun Belt, obviously just continues to grow in that department. Last year, you had that big second weekend, and now this year, it's been kind of a constant theme, and it wouldn't surprise me that we're getting another Power 5 win this week when Marshall plays NC State.
Well, we're certainly hoping to hold up our end of the deal. We've done it once this year, but
yeah,
we are not carrying the load. Everybody is seeming to be contributing when they have the opportunity, and that's exactly what you want to see. I can't sit here and tell you that I am an expert historically on the Sun Belt. We weren't a part of it until last year. But I did see a tweet earlier, a couple days ago. I think it was a Georgia Southern fan that put it out that said all Sun Belt games have been elevated to major network, like linear networks this week for the first time. What the heck are we seeing in real time right now, Noah?
I think we're seeing the emergence of a conference here. We joked earlier on in this episode about, Power 5 and Group of 5 and just those monikers that have been established. I too, Russ, I know you don't like the Power 5 moniker. I use it, but I think the one thing that I don't like to get on my soapbox right now is the fact that there's this constant conversation about when is the Sun Belt going to become a Power 5 league. The reason the Power 5 was developed is because there's different governing rules. So the Sun Belt's never going to be a Power 5 league. But can they compete against those Power 5 programs or Autonomy 5 programs, whatever you want to call them? Absolutely. They can do that game in and game out. And I think what you're seeing is a conference that, really from top to bottom, with maybe the exception of 2 or 3 teams right now, is strong. Caden and I talk about it a lot on our podcast. We truly believe that sitting here heading into week 6, that there are 9 to 10 teams that could very easily find themselves in a championship conversation. So when you have that level, obviously, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that's what you're seeing in the Sun Belt. And then I think the other aspect that plays into things is, for as much as people like to harp against the transfer portal, and I know Marshall has been hurt by the transfer portal in multiple sports. I think of basketball. I think of, football. The transfer portal is also helping programs like teams in the Sun Belt, because you are seeing players that initially went Power 5 to those top programs that are now either returning home or having to drop down a level and playing fantastic football. So I think that you're kind of seeing, this, the top end of the Group of 5 kind of coalesce around the Sun Belt. I think that this is the premier Group of 5 conference at this point. They've leaned into those regional rivalries. And let's be honest, ESPN wants to put a good product out on national television. And when you can bring in an ESPN broadcast crew to a sold-out Joan C. Edwards Stadium, when you can do the same to James Madison, when you can have App State have sellouts every game, ESPN is going to come to those games, and I think that's what you're seeing more. You're seeing that regional rivalry component really play in to these huge fan bases and these huge sold-out games. And ESPN says, why would I go to a game on a Thursday night for a couple of American Conference opponents where you're not going to see a ton of fans in the stands, when I can go to a sold-out game in Boone or a sold-out game up in Huntington?
Yeah, or they could go to Sheets and watch Conference USA.
Yeah, we're not missing that, man, at all. I think you're right, man. I love it. It seems like we just happened to, I'm going to use a bad pun here, we caught lightning in a bottle with our timing to move to the Sun Belt, and now they were already trending upward.
Yes.
And Marshall just hit it at the right point. Also
Agreed.
bringing in teams, Southern Miss, they just fit right in there, and Old Dominion and James Madison, they just fit, right? We just fit. So let's talk about this current makeup, I guess you would call it, of the Sun Belt Conference. It's great for a number of sports. Football is really competitive. Soccer has really become maybe arguably the best league in the country right now. And baseball is
three in the top 5 right now. I believe 1, 2, 3 at this point.
Yeah, who the hell would have thought the epicenter of collegiate soccer is in the state of West Virginia? Yet here we are. And then, of course, we know what baseball is in the Sun Belt too. So let me ask you the tongue-in-cheek question that I love to ask. What's the dream scenario for you when you think about the Sun Belt? This would be better if we could, expand, or we need to stay right where we are. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think right now for me, it's stay right where we are. I don't want to see a product that's working, change right now. I don't think that the Sun Belt needs to make a move right now. And that's consistently been a theme that you've heard from the conference office. Keith Gill has said that the conference is not, currently looking at expansion. I've heard that in personal conversations with just people that I've been around in the conference and even some of the athletic directors. But in this age of college football, things change quickly, and things could change by the time we're done recording this. We could have another team announce that they're leaving a conference. So for me, if you're the Sun Belt, I don't think you ever want to go away from what has made you so strong over the last couple of years, and that's leaning into regional rivalries. So if we're talking dream scenario, I think you have to look at some other teams maybe inside this current footprint that makes sense based on the formula that we have already seen. I think in the end, to me, it probably comes down to, are you looking at adding 2 teams in the future? I really like ECU. I know that they're in the American right now. The American has a better TV deal. I don't think ECU fans are as excited about potentially joining the Sun Belt and maybe taking a step down in their mind. But I think in a couple of years, if this trend continues, we're going to see a better TV deal for the Sun Belt. They might even leap the American in terms of revenue distribution. And then at some point, that conversation becomes really interesting. I just think they fit the model, regional rivalries. They have a fan base, that loves, playing teams inside their state and close to them. And then, out West, I think the biggest thing that I would love to find is I would love to find a team to match up with Texas State. I think it would be important to maybe add another team from Texas or add a team from that side of the conference, maybe a UTSA, maybe someone like that. So I think it's interesting. I think in the past, you've seen the Sun Belt lean into the FCS ranks, much like they just did with JMU. I think they're at a point in this story arc of the conference that they don't have to necessarily consider going to the FCS route at this point. I think that they can go hunting for maybe some other group of 5 conference teams if they look to expand in the future, which again is still up in the air.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anything is like right now on the table, but we've talked about it many, many times. There are 2 or 3, maybe 4 that already are inside the footprint that would absolutely add value and excitement to certain fan bases. We just need to get past this hierarchy of, we're a better conference because we're here. It just doesn't play. We're all the same team. I mean, we're all in the group of 5 fighting for the same slot. So by and large, we're all the same team with mostly the same identity and the same type of fans. So this we're better than you and you're better than us type deal, I don't think it really plays as much as it did. But
you do have to remember, at the end of the day, money talks. And
of course,
obviously that's what's running college football right now. So I think the point you're making is great, but I think you always have to look at the money here because that's where decision makers are making their decisions off of right now. Love it or hate it.
No. I agree 100% with the money. I'm talking about fan perception when I say that. That's all. Russ, what do you got on the burner here for Noah right now?
Well, I was just going to ask if you wouldn't mind taking a little bit of a history lesson for us and telling us how your podcast was formed. You got with Caden and put this together, how long you've been doing it, that sort of thing. How did it come about?
Yeah, it's actually, a really interesting story. I've been, doing play-by-play for the Sun Belt Conference. This will be year 3. I do a lot of the women's sports championships. So it's been fun to interact with some of the Marshall coaching staffs. Obviously, it was a good year, women's basketball, softball. In the last couple of years, even volleyball. It's been fun getting to know Ari Agnes as well. So as I'm doing this, my dream on my day job is play-by-play. And obviously I want to get to the point where I'm calling football games consistently. Easier said than done early on in your career to break into those levels. So I said, what's a way that I can be around college football, start to build up a knowledge base without necessarily calling those football games every Saturday? And so that's where the idea for the Frary and Smith podcast came about. But when that idea first popped up, it was just me. It was just Frary. I actually attended Sunbelt Media Day 2 years ago, and through that was able to get connected with Harry Lyles, who currently works at ESPN. He does sideline on the Thursday night package as well as on Around the Horn. And he's actually a Georgia State graduate. I just started talking to him. I said, I'm looking for someone who played in the Sun Belt that maybe is active in media. And he says, well, let me get you connected with Caden Smith. That was the first week of August last year that Caden and I talked for the first time. A week later, we're down in Atlanta taking headshots for promotion. I had a team of a producer and a graphic designer already on board. So within the span of about 3 weeks, we launched the Frary and Smith podcast. Our first episode, went out for week 1 last year. And then, the rest is, as they say, history. But it's been a fun journey getting to know Caden, just the insight that he brings. And we're both on similar career arcs. We're both early on in our careers and looking to make a name for ourselves. The one thing that I will always talk about with Caden is I have never met someone that is willing to work as hard as Caden Smith. He will, dig into these games. He watches more Sunbelt ball than probably most people do. And so that has been a valuable addition to this podcast. He's been excellent to work with. And thankfully, the fans in the conference have really enjoyed it. And we're certainly looking forward to just continued growth and further expansion into these fan bases as the podcast continues to run.
KD, we need to have a producer and some headshots.
I was going to say, what the hell? How come we don't have a graphic designer and a producer, man?
I don't know if Photoshop can fix those two faces, right?
Have you seen this hair, man? I mean, come on. We need to fly to Atlanta and get some headshots done. It's over. It's convinced.
My guy might be able to add more hair on you, KD, if you KD.
Hey. No, I stick with the trademark. I just leave a hat on all the time. That's kind of how That's just kind of how I roll and have in my entire life. Look, man, I don't take myself too seriously. I think that comes through on our show. I love to have a good time. I'm just a regular dude that has the unbelievable luxury and has found this niche to be able to talk herd ball and talk about the herd, and people like it. I don't know how I ended up here. Sometimes I don't really feel like I deserve to be here, but at the same time, I'm so humbled by the acceptance that we've found between herd fans, herd coaches, players, and admins, and folks like you that are, just Sunbelt personalities that are like, hey, man, we kind of like what you're doing. So it's very, very humbling. At the end of the day, I'm just a fan. Russ is just a fan. We have completely separate lives, other jobs and families, and we get to talk about the herd. Nobody has it better than Russ and I do in the herd fan base. Absolutely nobody. Let me give you an opportunity to tell everybody where they can find the Frary and Smith podcast. Give me all the outlets, the socials, everywhere. We want to drive all the herd fans over and grow that listenership for you.
Yeah, we've made it pretty easy. Right now, we find ourselves on Twitter and Facebook. You can find us at Frary and Smith there. We're very active on both of those platforms with content throughout the week. You can listen to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. There are plans in the future to expand it into video. We're just trying to determine when the right time is to make that leap. But we record episodes every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We're going to, on Fridays, we're going to preview the weekend and the games that are upcoming. We try to take a holistic look at the conference. We can't necessarily hit every game because of the slate of games. But then on Monday, we're going to come back each week and we recap what happened on the weekend. We try to hit the biggest games. We've talked a lot of Marshall football this year, and I'm certain we'll talk more Marshall football this week. And then our midweek episode on Wednesdays, we're always bringing a Sunbelt student athlete on. We're actually working on an appearance of a Marshall Thundering Herd athlete in the weeks ahead. But this week, we brought on App State's kicker, Michael Hughes. He talked a little bit about his game-winning kick against ULM the other day. So just a great opportunity to get to know some of the faces in the Sun Belt. So we love what we do. We do that all season long. We're going to be on site for games over the next couple of weeks. We're going to make it to the conference championship. And then we'll go all off season long too. And we've got, again, some special things that we're cooking up for the off season. So it's been a fun journey. We love what we do. We love the Sun Belt, and we're excited to continue growing alongside podcasts like you guys and the Sun Belt as a whole.
Well, let me get you out of here on this one. First of all, I'd like to say, featuring Michael Hughes, really cool because that's a West Virginia kid, right? So you're getting into the state. Went to high school at George Washington High School. Same as App State head coach.
Correct.
Both GW alums, just 45, 50 minutes down the road from Huntington. So really familiar. We were recruiting Michael as well, and he chose to go to App State. So I'm glad he had that big kick this last week and made a name for himself on a national stage. That's really cool. We love to see the 304 kids doing well no matter where they play. So let's talk about this while we get you out of here. What is your expectation for this Herd team now that the Sun Belt Conference play is about to hit full swing?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know I feel validated a little bit because in the offseason, I'm sitting there, Caden and I are talking about how Marshall is a real dark horse in this Sun Belt East. Obviously, many teams were talking about the JMUs, the App States, but I felt from the beginning that this was a Marshall football team that could make some noise. And so far through, 5 weeks of the season, Marshall has clearly proven that they are going to be a team that's going to be in championship conversations this year. This is a loaded Sun Belt East. I think we're going to see some bloodbaths of games coming up. I think of that JMU Marshall game that's coming up in a few weeks. We've got JMU Georgia Southern this weekend, App State Coastal Carolina coming up on Tuesday. So the Sun Belt East is loaded, but I think Marshall has a really good chance. They're not playing the sexiest style of football. Most fans are not going to turn it on and be like, man, this is just fun football to watch. They grind you down. They outwork you. And then they take you on in the third and fourth quarter and run away with it. So this is a fun Marshall team. I think the defense has been as good as advertised. I still want to see more growth on the offensive side of the football, particularly from Cam Fancher. Rasheen Ali, I posted a tweet the other day. He's been a cheat code early on this year as he's been throughout his entire career. So really excited about the outlook for this Marshall team. I think Herd fans can expect them to be in the title conversation and perhaps hosting a Sun Belt championship come that first weekend of December.
Boy, oh boy, I think a lot of folks are going to like to hear that. Russ, if you've got anything else for Noah, let's let him have it. Otherwise, take us out of here, Kat.
Noah, thank you for coming on our show. We wish you the most success that you could possibly have on your show. We look forward to all the coverage that you bring, not just to our team that you hate, but all the teams in the Sun Belt that you hate. So we'll definitely champion you guys as we have been, sharing your links and everything. And I encourage all of our listeners to go and get a take from someone who sees everything in the Sun Belt.
Yeah.
And not just what KD and I say, but thanks for being on our show.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. This has been it's been fun, and I promise after I spend some time in Huntington, I have some of your Low Country boil, Russ. I will change my opinion of the Marshall Thundering Herd team.
There you go. But otherwise, KD, I'm going to take us out of here. And whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Cam, whether you see us down at NC State, bringing home another ACC victory, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the ThunderCast. Caden, we'll get you next time, man. I promise. We loved having Noah, but we'll get you in there next time. It's the ThunderCast. We'll see you next week. Later.